it was fun watching that game. There's a lot of points to be had, and like, if that's what a bad game for Todd Gurley looks like, I'll take it. And I think the loss means. Remember, I was saying earlier, I was concerned that he might not need to play Week 16. Now I'm pretty confident that he will. So this is good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best play in that game was the Malcolm Brown touchdown. Do you remember seeing that Malcolm Brown touchdown?
That was beautiful. That was really good. That was really good.
Yeah. I guess the one takeaway, I mean, yeah, you can never stop Gurley. You can slow him down, obviously. But one takeaway that I noticed, and I noticed it happened last year in the playoff game against the Eagles where the Rams lost, they neutralized Todd Gurley in the receiving game.
Mm-hmm.
So Gurley did not get going yesterday in the receiving game. Most of his fantasy points were obviously from the touchdown and some of his rushing yards. I think he finished with like 80 yards, something around there.
Yeah, and a couple of catches, but even some of those were for loss, so he didn't really have any receiving.
So obviously it comes down to game flow. It comes down to having the personnel, and obviously you have Drew Brees. So I guess to neutralize Todd Gurley a little bit, you need to be the Rams need to be playing against a pretty darn good quarterback. They probably need to be in catch-up mode, and they need to have the personnel to neutralize Todd Gurley from catching the ball. I mean, I don't know if they have a spy on Gurley, but he's not catching the ball. So if he's not catching the ball with space, he's not as effective. I mean, he's still, probably the number one RB in football, but you know what I'm saying here.
Yeah, they definitely the New Orleans defense definitely played sort of like Gurley first and everybody else, and you think the Rams scored 35 points or whatever, so like that's a pretty good effort, by Goff to utilize all three of his receivers. There's always the occasional surprise, Tyler Higbee or whatever, right? And it's like, but it's not enough. It wasn't enough. Like without Gurley, all those receivers and no-name tight ends together, they're still not enough. Like against the best teams, it's like that's what's scary. Is like the Golden State Warriors of football can put up 35 points in a game and like have never been in a position to really win that game. That's crazy.
And I'm for sure the Rams never targeted the tight end like they did yesterday. Both of those guys were definitely heavily involved. I'm not sure if because they couldn't get Gurley out in space, but there were definitely tight ends running routes, so maybe that was part of their game plan. But I don't know, like defensive coordinators going forward, they need to be able to see how the Eagles shut down Gurley in the playoffs last year, how the Saints slowed him down yesterday. And I mean, they usually have a quarterback spy, but they should probably someone needs to be on the field. One of those linebackers needs to be a Gurley spy. I mean, if I was a defensive coordinator, I would just try and make sure that Gurley doesn't catch the ball.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think, but that's crazy to think. Like, all right, so for the Rams to win, they're gonna have to settle for throwing to Cooks and Woods and Kupp, and like those guys are they're all pretty good. Yeah. But you're right, like none of those guys can be your best player, especially if your best player is Todd Gurley, right? Like it's kind of how it is with the Saints. I think the Saints secondary needs should get a little bit of credit because again, only 35 points, right? But it's the Rams. They're great. And one thing though, on the Saints, Marcus Williams, right? If you know that name, it's because he's the guy who missed the tackle that allowed Diggs to make that play in the playoffs, right? He's the guy. He did the exact same thing on that Malcolm Brown touchdown. He just put his head down, thinking he could knock him into the sideline, and he didn't wrap. And it's like, for all the NFL, I think everybody loves to talk about their systems and their schemes and their this and their that. But like at some point, players need individual attention for strengths and weaknesses of theirs. You know what I mean? And somebody's got to say it. Marcus Williams, man. I know they keep changing the rules, and you've never known how to tackle in the NFL in the season and a half you played in it. But like, you got to use your arms, man. You can't just drop your head. Like that's gonna keep happening to you.